Welcome, everyone. I'm Kevin Miller. In this episode, filling the deficit of mentoring in your life. So, mentors, chances are slim you have someone who really fills the role. And these days, people will tend to cite their favorite authors and philosophers and influencers as their mentors. And to that degree, I'd say, gosh, almost everyone in my life mentors me. I learn from everyone, all my guests for sure. However, I really define a mentor as someone who literally knows you and is deeply invested in helping guide you. And we used to have this in families where we, lived in a village and lived closely amongst family and friends. And we had grandparents and aunts and uncles and even neighbors who were truly involved in guiding our lives. Today, most people do not have that. We're really isolated. So a few years ago, I sat down with Ken Blanchard, famous business and personal leader. Ken authored The 1 Minute Manager, a business classic that sold more than 15 million copies. But this conversation wasn't about management. It was about mentoring. So Ken became the mentor for Claire Diaz-Ortiz. She's an author, speaker, and innovative advisor. She was an early employee at Twitter and named one of the most, I think it was the 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company, called the woman who got the Pope on Twitter. Well, Claire's an award-winning author of 8 books that have been published in more than a dozen countries. The story here, though, is that Ken became a mentor for Claire. And he asked her to co-author a book with him, and they titled it 1 Minute Mentoring: How to Find and Work with a Mentor, and Why You'll Benefit from Being One. And Ken asked Claire to do the book because he is her mentor, but he said she has become my mentor as well in regards to especially understanding the younger generation. There's a big age gap between them. It makes an incredibly valuable perspective, I think, on the need and value and opportunity of mentoring. And I'm bringing this back now because at the age of 53, about a year and a half ago or so, I found really, in some ways, the first true mentor in my life. And it has been absolutely transformational. So I invite you to join me as I talk with Ken and Claire here about mentoring so you can consider how and why to find a mentor for yourself. Hey, my core devotion is finding deep fulfillment in my life. More and more, I'm working with people individually, mentoring, you could say, to a degree, but helping them find their deep fulfillment, often in what gives them purpose and applying that to their work or a business. If you want to connect with me, find me at kevinmiller.co or email me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. All right, coming up now, we're going to talk with Ken Blanchard and with Claire Diaz-Ortiz about mentoring.
Well, it's such an incredible honor to have you guys both on here. And after reading the book, I feel like I'm talking to the characters in essence here. And I mean, to start off with, so it sounds like from what I know of you guys, you have together a relationship like this. You've had some mentoring between the two of you. How did that originate?
Well, it really originated that Claire contacted me, the way I say it, and said that, mentors in the past have always been older, and us youngins can use the wisdom of you older folks. But I think that you older folks could use some mentoring from some of us young folks too, particularly around technology and all those kinds of things. And as we started the dialogue with the folks that work with us on our books and all, they said, wow, this is going to be exciting. Is that a fair estimate, Claire?
I think that is very fair. I like to say that when we started working on this project together, I had this vision that, most of the time Ken would be sort of spouting wisdom and I would be, scribbling down these sort of gems constantly and then reviewing them in my nightly notes. And although that did happen, there was a lot more give and take than I ever expected. And I think we'll get into that a little more in this interview, but really the sort of back and forth and the really cross-generational mentoring of it all was significantly more powerful in real life than I could have ever expected.
So you were in the place that a lot of folks are in looking for a mentor, that you had to step out and ask and take that risk in there. What led you to doing that with Ken specifically? And did you have a little bit of that, okay, I'm just going to ask, and that thought of probably everybody else is too, is he really going to let me take that time?
Well, I think this whole idea of putting yourself out there and asking for a mentor is a challenging one, but it is also one to carefully consider before you do it, because it's not just about sort of having the guts to do it. It's also about finding someone who you think you can really connect with and really resonate with and really share values with. There is kind of this fad, about how powerful mentoring can be. And I think that one of the downsides of that is that sometimes people just sort of go after anyone who looks shiny to be their mentor, right? But a good mentor is going to be someone who shares values with you.
Okay. And so on that, and yeah, can I assume that you have been, well, let me ask you that. You are in the role of mentor, even as you are getting mentoring from your mentees here, but in past years, what did you look for in your own mentoring? Did you literally have a menu, in essence, of people that may involve, the similar characteristics or circumstances in your life that they had in their lives, and you looked for some specific qualities unique to you?
Well, I think Claire was getting at it. A friend of mine told me that if you're going to work with somebody, there's two aspects. One is essence and the other is form. Essence is heart to heart and values to values, and form is what are we going to do together? And a lot of times people jump to form, like, will you be my mentor? And you haven't spent any time just talking and getting to know each other to see if there's a connection in terms of values and personalities and interests and all that. And I think that's just been a powerful thing. And so Claire and I got a chance to spend some time together and find that we had essence. And before we started to talk about, well, what might we do with it, in terms of form and whether it should be a book or whatever.
Right. So speak to when I think of, and I assume I'm stereotypical, you guys can tell me, but I tend to think of, okay, if I want mentoring, I want somebody who has gone ahead of me, and I tend to think of age. But Ken, you just talked about it in relation to Claire, that she has gone ahead of you, been ahead of you in the aspect of technology and maybe some other arenas. And so how often do you look at, age just as in regards or as opposed to experience in a specific area you want help in?
Well, I think you mainly want to look at what's the area you're interested in and all, I've written a lot of books and I had some wonderful mentoring relationships. For example, I wrote a book with Norman Vincent Peale, and he was 86 years old at the time. And I was, like 42 or 3.
Wow.
And people told me that we would really be interesting to write a book with him, I was interested in writing something on the power of positive management, And he was so interesting is that when I met with Norman and his wife, Ruth, and our publisher and all, we had a long lunch and there was no form question. They wanted to know about me and they wanted to know about me to know about them and all that kind of thing. And at the end of the luncheon, Norman turns to Ruth and asks the ultimate essence question. He said, Ruth, do you think we should write a book with this young man? We hadn't even decided what the topic would be. And she said, absolutely, under one condition. He said, what's that? From now on, when we work together, he will bring his wife, Margie. The 4 of us will do this together, because they heard a lot about Margie. And it was really amazing. And we ended up writing a book on ethics rather than on power of positive management. But it was really, and I had a chance to write a book with Truett Cathy, who was the founder of Chick-fil-A, because I was interested in the need for generosity. And he was one of the most generous men I'd ever met. And I just went to him and asked if he'd be interested in that, but I had met him through Norman. And I think we had some essence first before I went to him with a form question.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to pose the same question to you, Claire, as well, because you're in a different time of life, a different culture in so many ways. So yeah, how have you experienced that same issue?
I think we often think of sort of the traditional mentoring relationship as what we've defined in this book as a cross-generational relationship. Essentially, you've got a mentor from an older generation and a mentee from a younger one. But in all honesty, one of the things we touch on in the book is that mentoring relationships can come in all different shapes and sizes. And, when you start to think about the different types of mentoring relationships out there, you realize, oh yes, I've heard of that. But people often default to this cross-generational mentoring one. But, for example, we talk about, the organization Big Brothers, Big Sisters in the book. That's the classic sort of adult adolescent mentoring relationship. You've got in many, many companies these days this new trend towards new hire mentoring, which is really often a peer-to-peer thing, right? I start in a new industry or in a new firm, and I am partnered with someone who may be of my same generation, may even be younger than me, but who sort of knows the ropes. So, age is just one factor, and some types of mentoring relationships are going to benefit from that, but others really don't have much to do with that at all.
Okay, so in this aspect of mentoring, well, let me ask you, Claire. So you are on the younger side of life. Have you had the chance to do mentoring with somebody who, even from a younger age, you've been able to impart to?
Sure. So, part of my sort of story of finding my way to Silicon Valley happened when I was living in Africa, running a small nonprofit organization out of Kenya, and ended up becoming a foster mom to a Kenyan teenager, bringing him to the US as he went through high school and then, went on to college. And so for me, that was an early mentoring relationship. I was, I guess, in my mid-20s when I met Sammy. Sammy was 13. We had this sort of dozen-year difference between the two of us. And for me, that was a very traditional mentoring relationship. And it was only sort of in later years as Sammy got older that I began to identify all that I was learning from him at the same time. But I would say that's sort of the kind of foundational early mentoring relationship I have as a mentor. Now, on the other side, I had many different important experiences as a mentee. I think for many of us, those first important mentee experiences typically come in some sort of an academic or sometimes church environment, right? And I can sort of look back and pinpoint a few key people in my life who really, brought me to the next fork in the path, essentially.
With this focus, if I look at you guys as mentors to the mentoring topic in general, is this something that you look at as you need to have this ingredient in your life and you need to have a primary one, or do you guys employ multiple mentoring relationships in your ongoing life?
Well, first of all, I would say to people, if you stop learning, lie down and let them throw the dirt on you, because you're already dead, And so I think that you should go at life with a learning opportunity, and you're going to want to learn in different areas. In our Refire book, we talk about, what are you learning intellectually, which is really important, so who can stimulate you there. But there's also, what about you? What are you doing physically? So I got some mentors. I got a whole team now working on my health and making sure I'm staying in shape and all that kind of thing. And then spiritually, what are you doing there in terms of mentoring? I've mentored a lot of younger people in that spiritual area because I can tell them about my journey, and people have come to ask me. And in our company, my title is I'm the chief spiritual officer. I decided I want to be the chairman of the board, and I leave a morning message for everybody in our company every morning. And I do three things. First, what I do is I tell people who to pray for. And we have over 300 people, and faith and non-faith, and nobody minds when I say Laura's mom is really sick and we need to send our love and our prayers to her. And we got a lot of data on that. Then I praise people of all the things that I've ever taught over the years and all the big books I've written. Somebody said, I'm going to take everything away from you except one concept, Blanchard. What would you hold on to? I would hold on to the second secret of the 1 Minute Manager, about catching people doing things right and accenting the positive. And so I praise people. People, when I praise them, it's usually because somebody told me that somebody did something. And that always, increases the esteem of somebody's boss because they have passed information up the hierarchy. And then I leave an inspirational message on something that I've read or something that I've thought about. And also, like, I got a letter from an Australian a while back who I had sent a couple of books. I met him at an airport in Kenya when we were on a safari, and he said, Ken, the business you're in is you're in the business of teaching people the power of love rather than the love of power. And so I did a whole thing on that. And so, but off of that, I've mentored a lot of people, on faith, but usually because of what I learned from Zig, which was, I think the next great evangelist movement is demonstration, not proclamation. And as if you want people interested in what you believe, you ought to behave differently and not out there preaching the gospel, where that's not your field per se. And so it's been a lot of fun. Then I've mentored people in writing too. I started with Mark Miller, who was the head of training at Chick-fil-A, and we wrote a book together because he had this wonderful serve model he created at Chick-fil-A. And I said, boy, that ought to be a book. We ended up writing a book together, and then he got into writing books, and now he's written all kinds of books, and it's really been fun to see him grow in that whole area. That's just wonderful stuff.
When we look at, as I hear you guys talk, when we look at let's say business and personal, those two aspects, and with a lot of people, we have an aspiring audience here at the Ziglar Show, and you guys do too, from your audiences and people that are in the business world and they're trying to progress there. Do you find that people often come to the mentoring aspect or looking for a role model, looking for counsel from a vocational standpoint, but does it generally end up siding, as far as the benefit, just right into the personal life?
Well, I think that really, connects with a question that I know Ken and I both get all the time, which is, what is this difference between coaching and mentoring? Because certainly in the business world, you hear those both kind of interchanged a lot. Yeah. And so I think for the definition that we came to through the process of our work was kind of deciding that, coaching is really about working on or working through a specific performance related issue, whereas mentoring is more holistic. And so that really, gives an answer to the question you're asking right there, right? When you start a mentoring relationship, can you completely divide the personal from the professional? Probably not. I think most mentoring relationships really, really depend on a kind of a holistic view of your life and, going after that essence before form, right? If you're trying to make sure that you can connect with the potential mentor or mentee on values first, then that probably means that you're going to be digging into some life stuff during the course of that relationship.
Okay. So you, Claire, I'll ask on a personal level, and I'm sorry, I don't know if these were the twins your first kids, or did you have some before then?
I have a 3-year-old, and then I have these twin 1-year-olds. Yeah.
Okay. Well, even with the 3-year-old, you have twins, you just took it to a whole different level. So in that, with parenting, is that your thought process? Did you go, okay, I need some parenting coaching, or did you really look, because we could get that from a book, granted. And to some extent, you know what? I'm gonna deepen the question there. We are in a culture. We're here right now speaking in the personal development realm where we all live to a great degree, and with that, we get so much input. We can get input from the best and the brightest out there, and yet I hear from you guys that's not what we're talking about mentoring. Do you put that in? That's great coaching, but do you say that is not mentoring as you guys have defined it here?
There are different levels of mentorship. I will say that, right? You've got people I've talked to through the course of this book that say, I feel like I found a mentor through the pages in X author, right? Something I've certainly felt about Zig Ziglar and about Ken, right? This is a mentor through the pages. And in some cases, those relationships move from the pages to a real in-person relationship, right? And you also have other types of mentors. Maybe, I think Michael Hyatt calls himself the virtual mentor, right? Where he shares business leadership lessons to people through his blog and sort of acts as a mentor like that. So I think there is a sort of ladder or, a ladder effect in mentoring. I think in our book, we talk about mentoring in what we hope is sort of the truest, best, most effective form where you have this one-on-one in-person relationship, but you can get tons out of short mentoring relationships, mentoring moments. I think that's a phrase that Ken coined, perhaps after a particularly good airplane flight in which I think he changed someone's life, but I'll let him tell that story. Mentoring comes in different packages.
Well, so in this, we're in a culture right now where we have a lot more content coming out every day about the lack of intimate relationships. More, we're all connected to a zillion people, social media wise, but a lack. So in that, it may be just an elementary question, but I like to get the issue out on the table. I mean, Ken, especially in your lifetime, have you seen this? There was an age back when we had apprenticeships, and now today there's so very little of that. In the same way with mentoring and having an intimate counseling relationship, a guiding relationship, do you see that we are further away from that and more in need than ever in today's culture and society because of, again, this furthering away from the intimate relationships that we so vitally need?
It's interesting. Simon Sinek spoke at our client conference recently. Quite a guy, his popular book about Start With Why. But he said that the biggest disease in the country is not cancer or heart, it's isolation. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting to say that people feel isolated, and yet we have capabilities to get information in such easy ways. But he said that's not what the issue is. Mm-hmm. It's really where you have a relationship or emotional relationship with somebody, not just somebody online or answering voicemails and emails and stuff like that. And so I think it's a major issue for people. And I think that we need to get back into organizations with having people have kind of mentors or apprentice when they join a company, and somebody that they can relate to. And it could be as Claire was saying, it could be somebody who's the same age and a peer, or it could be an older person. I think it's so stupid to put people out in the pasture at 65 in organizations where we've talked about they would be tremendous to even be half-time as mentors to young people about not only the organization, but about life and all that. And what we have found is that would give new life to these retirees by learning from the younger people that they mentor. And I just think we have to be, Peter Drucker said years ago to me, nothing good happens by accident. You got to provide some structure. And we can't hope that people in organizations will somehow find intimacy and lose isolation just by chance. It doesn't happen.
So on that aspect, no, Claire, go ahead.
I'm reminded of another thing Simon Sinek said in that talk that was incredibly powerful, as he was talking about, so my personal background, I was in Silicon Valley as an early employee at Twitter. So I'm very passionate about the power of social media to create connections and do good in the world. And obviously in the last year that has sort of taken the forefront of, CNN.com more than ever, as we're seeing how social media can really be a bad thing for our connections, right? And so Simon Sinek in that talk gave this really interesting story of being out at brunch in Manhattan and walking into a brunch place and seeing a table full of adults, and then next to that table, a table full of kids. So, the parents are eating together and the kids are eating together, and every kid at that table had a device. And, I am using an iPad, and I'm a parent of young children. I understand that iPads are a reality, but he was basically using this as an example of saying, what are we modeling to the next generation? Yeah. What does this do to relationships, right? This constant technology. And when we think that relationships happen via technology, does that change our vision of what a real relationship is like? And so it's such an interesting discussion, because I do think, and one of the things we talk about in our book is there is power in technology to help relationships. Two of the characters in our book, they're using Skype to try to connect at times, right? They're text messaging. They're not always necessarily sitting down for coffee right in front of each other to have their, mentoring catch-ups. And technology can help us. I live far away in Argentina. And so for me, connecting with Ken is often about, Skype or doing it as we are today via video technology. But we've just got to remember that there's a place for everything, right? And these relationships really need all of us at the same time, whatever that might mean for our context.
Well, and I think it's important that people, when you have a mentoring relationship, that you keep in contact, because sometimes you both get busy and you can't have a face-to-face meeting, but you could say, let's see, if you got an issue, I'd love to hear about it, rather than waiting 3 weeks until we get face-to-face. And so that's what I think Claire's saying, is that we got to use all the things. But if it was all on social media and online and all, it wouldn't be much of a mentoring relationship because you would miss that connection thing. And
Okay, well, you just addressed my next question, which was, I do these, yes, so I'm not as far away as you, Claire. Argentina, I did not realize that at all, but I am way up in the Rocky Mountains. Not a whole lot of people come by here unless they're on the way to skiing, which I can take care of you then, but otherwise they're not coming up here. So I do these via Zoom, and I went to an event in Nashville, Tennessee with a bunch of VIP folks, influencers a couple weeks ago. And I honestly could not remember some of the folks if I had actually met them face to face before, or if we had just done Zoom here to some degree. And I had to ask a couple of folks, and I embarrassed myself. And I really, I do this so often. So with that said, how important is that for somebody in this mentoring relationship to have someone where you can do the literal face to face in the flesh meetings at least part of the time, as opposed to always in a remote, in a cyber setting like this? Would you put that as a primary ingredient, that yes, you need to be able to be face-to-face at least occasionally?
Yes, I think it's really important because that's when you really can meet heart to heart.
Okay.
It's really hard to get heart to heart over, social media. You can get some there, but it's that, as Claire was saying, it's a combination and it's staying in contact, but you got to really spend some time with each other. This is nice technology way where we can see each other, so we have a chance. This is a more advanced technology thing, and so a lot of people, when they travel, they Skype and talk to their kids at home, and boy, that is a great advantage over phone calls or whatever, because you can actually see them and all. And so there's wonderful advantages, but actually being there to give them a hug and be there to just, be more in the same space is really nice.
When you talk about the intimacy, and Claire, I'll point this one at you, and I'm sure you can cite so many aspects of your vocational career and things that you've gotten great counsel imparted to you, but on a personal level with you as a young mom, and of course you got marriage in there and the pressures and everything going on. I'll ask you from a personal standpoint, where has some of the mentoring really made an impact in your personal, home, parenting, spouse life?
Yeah, I think it's probably no secret that I went through some sort of major upheavals in terms of identity when I became a mom. I was dying to become one, but having had a pretty high pressured career for a long time, there was definitely a shift that took place. And so for me, it was incredibly important to not only find mentors, but also to find sort of role models in the space. And I think that is something that we sometimes discount. This idea that, learning from someone else, maybe if you're just learning from them from afar, reading their books, that sort of thing, we don't realize how important it can be. But even when you can't have, some mentoring relationship with someone, maybe they've passed on, maybe they just aren't in a position to be your mentor, maybe they're the president of some country and that's not on their agenda this year, you can still learn from them.
Yeah.
And for me, I have always started sort of every learning journey in a book. And so when I was learning about what it meant to be a parent and to be a mom in a world in which I wanted to value my career and my kids at the same time, that was where I started. And I've been lucky that some of those people have, gone from sort of a mentor through the pages to, a role model and mentor in real life. But some of them have stayed on the pages and they have taught me well.
Do you find that there's need sometimes, and this can be for both of you or either one of you, to have multiple mentors for those specific areas of your life. I mean, I have significant things going on in my life as far as business. And I find myself right now gravitating towards people who have, had a business startup that's really gone to a massive level. That's a different area that not everybody has experienced. And yet over here, I've got a large family, and it's every bit as much of an effort. I don't always find somebody who has both of those things going on. And so do you find it's relevant to have significant mentoring relationships with different people, again, at the same time for those specific needs?
You get some people that'll give it to you both way. I mean, they got businesses and all that. Like we have a wonderful friend, Hiram Smith, who started Franklin Quest, and he's a Mormon and has all kinds of kids and grandkids. And he and Gail are just amazing models of parenting and with the family and all that. But he also was a wonderful entrepreneur, we're doing stuff together. We're even going to go to Washington here soon to visit with some people who want to create a committee that can kind of get people to how do we create win-win environments rather than win-lose. And, what party are you and all? How do we do big picture stuff? And so it's fun to have people who you can admire in both sides. My dad was a great mentor to me because he was a retired as an admiral in the Navy and was an amazing guy. But he also, even though he was traveling and gone, I can never remember him missing an important event. He always was there, and called home every day if he was gone. And he was a mentor in a lot of ways. He started me in the whole leadership trail. I won the president of the 7th grade in junior high school, and I came home and I was all pumped up. And Dad said, "Well, here's the beginning of your leadership training." He said, "Ken, now that you're president, don't ever use your position." Because great leaders are great because people respect and trust them, not they have power. He said, "The greatest leaders I know have power, but don't use it."
So go ahead, Claire.
I also think, I'm a huge fan of having different mentors for just sort of helping you, if not in different areas, then just giving different voices to your life, right, as a whole. But I think this also brings up the idea that we kind of touched on earlier, but didn't dig into, which is, what do you do if kind of your mentoring relationship has maybe reached its end, right? And I was talking about the book with someone. I was doing an interview with someone, and they were saying, they're currently a mentoring relationship, and they are the mentor, and they are providing this advice to the mentee, but they feel like the mentoring relationship's kind of run its course. And so, this journalist was saying to me, so what should I do, Claire? Should I break up with my mentee? And I was like, no, don't break up with your mentee, because I think what we really learned and what we tried to convey in this book was this idea that, a mentoring relationship can be really close and really engaged for a season. And then it can kind of not be. But then you have that person, in your sort of wider circle of trust, someone you can call on, someone who is a friend and a confidant, and that works. It's not about sort of starting a relationship and then ending that relationship and then finding another one to start and then ending that, right? It's about creating more relationships in your life for the long haul.
Yeah, and the kind of meetings and contacts you have might change, but they're still an important part of your life, that you can still call and be. I think that's really important, Claire, what you're saying there.
Yeah. What a gift to have your mentee or mentor alumni group that you can call back on. And it reminds me of Zig, and even today, when you go into the headquarters, the first thing you go by is his wall of fame. And it's the number of people, I think 20 some people who he cites as having the most influence in his life, people he was able to use for that time and always call on. And that's what he pointed to, that and his Father in heaven as this is why I am where I am today. Well, and you've mentioned a couple things like that. Should I fire my mentor? What are some of the top level mistakes as people look at, okay, I want to go after this. I need a mentor, or I want to be a mentor. What are some of the primary mistakes that we need to put on the board and get out of the way?
Well, what do you think about that, Claire? I think one mistake is that you can count on one person to, solve all your problems, and and overload them, and you just get immobilized. I don't know what's your thoughts on that. Some of the
Sure, I have two that I think are really common and really kind of dangerous. One of them is, forgetting to be in regular touch with your mentor or mentee and sort of turning that mentoring relationship into just sort of an SOS situation, right? You're in crisis, and so that's when you call on your mentor. And I think that does not do good things for the relationship. You need to really build that relationship over time. You need to, make deposits into that relationship as well. And if you're always calling on your mentor when it's a time of crisis, you're maybe doing a bit too much taking and not enough sort of giving. I would say on top of that, another thing that comes up in the story in our book is this idea of going deep too fast, which is very challenging because, we live in this world of more and more valuing authenticity, right? Ken and I recently heard Brene Brown talk, and she gave this incredible talk about, the importance of really being who we are in relationships with other people and being authentic. But there is a difference between, authenticity and revealing too much too fast, and making sure that you really have that trust and have that relationship in place before you kind of cross boundaries you shouldn't be crossing.
Well, and you mentioned that one of the mistakes is forgetting to be in regular touch. Do you find that, let's take podcasting, which is what we're doing right now. And there's a lot of content about, hey, if you're going to be serious in doing this, you need to do at least a show per week. And we used to talk about in blogging, how often to really keep people engaged. And in this relationship, especially at the beginning of a mentoring relationship, do you have a timeline that you would espouse that, this needs to be a weekly thing or at least bi-monthly? Or what is the secret sauce to making sure that you're not doing it too much and overwhelming each other, but that you're not letting too much time pass as well?
Well, that's one of the things when we talk about our kind of a mentor model is after you kind of have a mission, which is what do you want to accomplish, then you have to talk about, well, how are we going to engage with each other, because M is mission and E is, what's our engagement strategy, how often do we want to meet, in what ways, and all those. And so I think those are really important issues to get up front right away.
Oh, that's great. So that's, on goals, of course, we're Ziegler. So goals are top of the list as far as a topic. And it is so much focused on, Zig taught us, and you have as well, that we need to be specific. So in this is more than, are you saying this is more than saying, okay, I need some mentoring because I need to be better everywhere. I could be a better parent. I could be a better spouse. I could be better at my work. I could be a better employee, boss, manager. Do we need to have those specifics set out though? And so, no, I'm going after it for this specific primary
I think
purpose.
You need a mission. Don't you think, Claire? I mean, why are we together? What's this all about?
Yeah, we think in sort of the mentor model we created that, the first step is coming up with that mission statement. And not only is that kind of a clear way to know where you're going, but it's also a clear way to measure where you've been after a while, right? To sort of figure out, hey, is this working? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to set a new course? So I think having a goal, having a mission, and it doesn't have to be too big, it probably shouldn't be too big, is the best way to get started.
Okay. I won't put it to a number, but the top challenges. So as you have done this yourselves, both on both sides, mentor and mentee, but now as you're bringing this message to the masses, what do you still see as the primary challenges that people have in regards to taking that first step?
Well, I think it's recognizing that you have a need. That's where it would start, and then see. I wonder who around here might help. And one of the things we say in the story is that the young man says, well, gee, I could use some help. And, I'm not sure I'm in the right career. And, well, who do you think can help you? Well, you can ask family. Do you have any suggestions of people I might meet? And friends and all. And he has a couple of false starts with some people, just the essence wasn't right. And all that kind of thing, but it's really kind of sharing with people what you're looking for and getting some advice on who might be good people to talk to.
Claire?
I would say then, on top of that, we live in a world in which we all feel crazy busy. We've got so many things on our to-do list, and so creating and making a mentoring relationship important probably feels draining to some people. It feels like one more thing I should be doing. And I think really turning that idea on its head and realizing that, in a good mentoring relationship, this is something that should be energizing, that should make other areas of your life easier, smoother, and more enjoyable and fulfilled. So ultimately realizing that and having that be the reason that you do prioritize it in your life. Learning is, what does Ken say? The day you stop learning, the day is, I should just throw dirt on my grave or whatever it is.
No, let them throw dirt on you because you're already dead.
Yes. So this is something that comes into that aspect of you're going to need to give, something's going to have to give. So you're going to have to give up some good for this great. I mean, do you put it in, it sounds like you do, put it in the aspect of here we are, we're all trying to do and we're trying to pour out. And this is the piece of where we have to step back. And so self-care, ultimately, you talk about Brene Brown and this is an aspect of to fill myself. And do you see that, again, you've experienced it in your own experience and in other people, that when they do this, when they plug in, when they get this guidance and counsel and relationship, that then they are, and take the time for that, invest that time, that they are then able to go forward being that much more, an X factor times more proficient, efficient, successful in those endeavors that they want to achieve in the first place.
Well, I just want to put it something in perspective is that I think we got two selves. We have an external task-oriented self that's used to getting jobs done. And then we have a thoughtful, reflective self. And which one do you think wakes up quicker in the morning? The alarm goes off. John Ortberg, a pastor friend and wonderful author, says, what a lousy name for that. Why isn't it the opportunity clock, or it's going to be a great day? But the alarm goes off and boom, you jump into your task-oriented self and you're eating, while you're trying to get dressed, and you jump in the car and all. And we get so into tasks that we get exhausted, and we do it day after day. And then we get into this rat race. And Lily Talman, the great advisor from Hollywood, said that the problem with a rat race is even if you win it, you're still a rat. I think that the thinking about mentoring and all takes some time on your thoughtful, reflective self. We don't take enough time for solitude and thinking and prayer and other kinds of things. And you need to find some time, whether it's early in the morning or at night or a friend of mine gave me great advice. He said, don't put the radio on in the car when you get in. This is a wonderful time to get your thoughts together. And actually, I've imagined that Jesus might be sitting next to me so I can chat with him, and, because even with our prayers, we do too much talking and not enough listening. And so I think the whole idea of thinking through mentoring is getting into your thoughtful, reflective self in terms of where am I, where do I want to go, what do I need to do? And you're not going to do that if you're in the middle of the rat race, which so many people are.
Do you find that people who are in places of influence, they're the authors, the speakers, the experts, the authorities, the presenters, everybody, that they are sometimes less likely, do they get in that habit of giving and speaking, and they're the leader, and they are more likely to discount or not go after actually getting guidance from others?
Absolutely. I mean, there was a moment in the writing of our book where an editor actually said, in our book, there is an older, highly accomplished female executive. And at one point she is expressing some of her sort of doubts about what to do next. And there was an editor in the reading of this that said they didn't think, that was realistic, that someone at that level would be expressing, that she wasn't really sure what was next for her. And it was such an interesting moment for me to kind of hear that feedback, because I think that is really the mistaken idea of mentoring in the world, right? That the only people that need mentors are, the recent college graduates, or, the kid coming out of business school who's not sure what to do next. And that's not what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Ken, so you being at the older end of the spectrum, at least from Claire, talk to that. I mean, you're at that place as one of the most prolific influencers and leaders of our time, and you're also in the older years as well. are you still going after mentoring? Are you still seeking out others? Obviously, you talked about that with Claire, but speak to that, because again, I see, and I don't want to pick gender sides here, but my experience is men tend to be a little more on the arrogant side in general, that they are more prone to you're older, you've conquered the world to some degree. You don't need mentoring anymore. Is that still a problem that we have?
Yeah, well, I think it's a false, problem. I mean, I'm 78 years old, and I'm just so excited about life. In fact, Bob Buford wrote a wonderful book called Finishing Well, and he said that the most excited people in later years are people who think that the future is more exciting than the past, And I'll never forget, I interviewed John Wooden when he was 95 years old, Coach Wooden from UCLA. And I ended the interview, it was a leadership luncheon. And I said, Coach, are the best years ahead of you or behind you? And he had this great grin on his face. And he said, Ken, the past is the past. And I'm so excited about the future. And he said, and I'm hoping to be united with my wife, Nellie, again, because she had died and all. But, it's just that whole thing. And I think that, as I said, when you stop learning or stop really feeling that the future is exciting, I'm really, just so excited now. Some people are visiting us and they said, it's just exhausting watching you doing this and that and all. And I said, aren't you exhausted? I said, no, I'm having fun. I'm at the age, I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. People say, well, why do you keep on writing? I say, because it's fun, and so it's, and I'm constantly learning. It's really a wonderful opportunity to continue to learn. I just finished a book called Servant Leadership in Action, and I got 44 people to contribute short articles to this book, and most reading books, their articles are too long, but I wanted the thing. And so I had some interesting things, because I got people like Marshall Goldsmith and Patrick Lencioni and Francis Hesselbaum and Dave Ramsey and Laurie Beth Jones and, just all kinds of interesting, Simon Sinek and all. And I approached them, and it's one of the things I think that's good about Claire too, is that Claire and I are not competitive in our mindset against other people's theories and all. We're really open to learn. And therefore, people are really interested to discuss and talk with us, because they know that we're not there to show that we're the brightest bulb in town, but that we could learn something. And I think that's the attitude of a person who's open to be a good mentor as well as to get mentoring. Don't you think, Claire?
I completely agree. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to end on just a bit with essence and form, as you guys talk about. And in the essence part, and I found myself thinking about this because, for disclosure, I have not done a great job of getting mentoring, getting coaching, getting counsel. I'm the first to jump on a call to contact somebody. And through this show, especially, I feel like I've got a golden Rolodex to the best and the brightest, and I can get counsel. But I haven't really gone after mentoring to this degree. And as you talk about it, and I'm thinking, and a thought that came up is, and we hit on this a little bit, to find somebody who has had similar experience or has had more so in an area that I'm involved in, whether it's business or family. Yeah. But then when you look at, let's talk about marriage, and we often talk about finding someone, or even in a business partnership, that balances each other out. And I happen to be an oddity in that I married someone and we have a lot of similarities, which is great. We have great highs and then we have great lows, and we don't balance each other out in some ways. My primary business partner, very similar. We do not balance each other out. In this, when you look at mentoring and some of the great success stories, do you find that in that relationship, it is good to have somebody who has, a lot of similarities so you can resonate? Or is it good to find somebody who's going to see things from a different perspective and balance you out in that way?
Well, I think there's a difference between essence, which is about values and heart and all, and their personalities and that kind of thing, but because you don't want to work with somebody who's very different than you, that also doesn't have the same values. They're out to, it's all about me and all that kind of thing. So I think you want to separate those issues out. It's at first to, is this somebody who I can really relate to? Now they're different, and my wife Margie and I, she's got different strengths than I do and different things, So when we started our company, I said, you should be president. You're so much better at that kind of thing than I am, And so like I'm the head cheerleader, and she really was the one that really kind of built the thing before. And now our kids are running the company, and Margie's younger brother was born when she was a freshman at Cornell. And so it's really important to get essence, but then also get people that can help you. Because if everybody is just like you that's gathered around you, then there's a number of people that aren't necessary.
Yeah, granted. Claire, how about you on that in your own experience? Have you found a balance in there of having somebody who resonates similar values as Ken talked about, and understanding of the circumstances, the arena in life that you're trying to get help in, but then also having the balance of somebody who thinks a little bit differently or sees from a different point of view?
I think it's super valuable to have that baseline of shared essence, but then have someone who can kind of push you to think differently.
Yeah.
In the same way that we like to say, in corporations, CEOs are not helped by having, yes men and yes women around them all the time, right? I think we are not helped if we are trying to look to grow in a mentoring relationship by having someone that doesn't push us a bit, right? And ask us to look at things the other way, and push us to think if we can make a change or do something a little differently, if that would help us get to where we ultimately want to be.
Okay. Well, so let me ask then to give us a couple highlights on form. And we did talk a little bit about frequency, and I see that as a form question. Are there a couple for folks who are, obviously folks, go get the book. That's the point here. But just to hit people off on a high level, what would you give some highlights for form, for some of the structure of this relationship that will help it be healthy?
So, first and most importantly, you want to make sure you've got that mission statement that we were talking about, making sure that you have clarified why you are together, and, even to the extent of thinking, how long do we want to try this for? Right. So, we touched on this idea of engagement, of how often do you want to meet, but also thinking about sort of a timeline for the mentoring relationship. It doesn't mean it has to end then at all. You could keep it going just as intensely or even more so after that, but giving it sort of a trial period to see how it works, right? Then I would say another sort of key form issue is making sure that you build in time to review and renew within the context of that engagement. So making sure that you're not just sort of setting course and then sailing off into the sunset forever, but instead saying, hey, we've been doing this for this many months now. These were our goals. Are we on track to go towards them? Are we sailing in that direction? And are we connecting enough to be able to reach those goals ultimately?
Okay.
Now, Claire, it might be interesting to share with them just quickly the rest of the mentor model, because the R that she's just talking about is about review and evaluate, which is important. But we talked about M as being mission and E as engagement. Do you want to tell them a little bit about the N, the
Sure.
T, and the O quickly?
Sure. So in the mentor model, you've got M is mission, creating a clear mission statement. E is about engagement, making a commitment to regular meetings. N is about cultivating productive relationships that expand each other's network. And this is important because I think when people jump into a mentoring relationship, they assume the mentor is going to bestow on you all these interesting connections. But oftentimes the mentee also has connections to offer as well, right? Then the T in the mentor model is about trust, and realizing that not only do you need trust to get where you're going in that relationship, but that trust will take time. It won't be something that will happen right away. Then the O in that model is opportunity, realizing that mentoring relationships bring with them great opportunity. But of course, remembering that with opportunity comes that respect and that trust, and making sure that you are getting and choosing wisely and expanding upon opportunities that your mentor or mentee might be extending to you in a respectful way. And then the final step in the mentor model is this idea of review and renewal, which we touched on, aside from just reviewing regularly, going through that renewal process. Hey, do we want to keep doing this? Or is it time to sort of back burner our mentoring relationship for a while, have it not be as intense, but, remain within each other's sort of circle of trust? And that's pretty much the mentor model in a nutshell.
Well, it's such a timely message. Again, as always, I feel like I get to be the primary student. So thank you for inspiring my own life. I already over lunch talked to my primary business partner about this and the need that we both have in our lives for this. And so you've inspired us to pursue it. I love how you wrote the book. Of course, the story form is so engaging. And I appreciate more and more every day the shorter books, the plane ride book, or at least the There and Back book. So thank you guys for coming together, for being so authentic and sharing your own stories and giving this message. I mean, from the Ziglar standpoint, this is what we want to bring our audience. So just huge thanks to you. It's an incredible honor for both of you.
Well, thank you. It's been great being with you.
Thank you so much.
Well, friends, thanks for joining me on this discussion. In this discussion, that again is Ken Blanchard and Claire Diaz-Ortiz. And the book, the muse for this was 1 Minute Mentoring, how to find and work with a mentor and why you'll benefit from being one. I really hope this gives you some insight, some inspiration to pursue finding a mentor and maybe being a mentor, and also some ideas on how to find and create that relationship. Got a comment or question about it? Find me at kevinmiller.co or email me, kmiller@kevinmiller.co. And until next time, I just hope this episode helps you drive further and most of all, enjoy the ride.
Yeah.